What if I told you that every single time you saw a Volkswagen diesel car driving down the street, it was quietly poisoning you? Not by accident, not by negligence, but by design. Engineers sat in rooms, wrote lines of code, and deliberately programmed 11 million cars to cheat, to pass emissions tests in the lab and then spew up to 40 times the legal limit of toxic gases the moment they hit real roads. This wasn't a glitch, this was a decision, and it came from one of the most trusted car companies on the planet, Volkswagen, the people's car. When the truth came out, it triggered the biggest corporate scandal the automotive industry has ever seen. $150 billion in losses, executives arrested, a CEO gone overnight. This is how Volkswagen engineered the biggest lie in automotive history. I'm Cindy, and this is Billion Lifelines. To understand how Volkswagen ended up here, you need to understand one thing. Volkswagen didn't just want to be big, it wanted to be the biggest. For decades, Toyota held the crown as the world's #1 automaker, and Volkswagen was desperate to take it. In the mid-2000s, the company launched an aggressive strategy, become the most profitable and largest car manufacturer on Earth by 2018. A massive part of that plan depended on cracking America. But there was a problem. American emission standards were strict, much stricter than Europe's. Volkswagen needed to sell Americans on the idea that diesel was clean, efficient, and affordable. The engineering team knew the truth. You couldn't make a diesel engine that was powerful, fuel-efficient, affordable, and clean all at the same time. Something had to give. But leadership didn't want to hear that. The pressure from the top was relentless. Hit the targets, beat Toyota, win America, no excuses. And so, somewhere inside the walls of Volkswagen, someone made a choice. If they couldn't solve the problem with engineering, they would solve it with deception. Here's how it worked, and the simplicity of it is what makes it so disturbing. Volkswagen engineers developed what's known as a defeat device. It wasn't a physical piece of hardware, it was software, a few lines of code buried in the car's engine control unit. The software could detect when the car was being tested for emissions. It recognized the specific conditions of a lab test. The steering wheel wasn't turning, the car was on a dynamometer, the driving pattern matched the federal test cycle. When it detected those conditions, the engine switched into clean mode and met legal standards perfectly. But the moment the car hit real roads, the software switched off, and the engine would pump out nitrogen oxides at up to 40 times the legal limit of toxic gases. 40 times. And no one could tell. Volkswagen even marketed these vehicles under a campaign called Clean Diesel. They won Green Car Awards. They told the world they had solved the impossible equation. It was all a lie. And it worked for years, until someone decided to check. In 2013, a small research group called the International Council on Clean Transportation wanted to prove that diesel cars could be clean. They partnered with researchers at West Virginia University, a team with a modest budget and portable testing equipment. They selected 2 Volkswagen diesels at 1 BMW and drove them on real roads across California. The BMW passed, but the Volkswagens were emitting nitrogen oxides far beyond the legal limit. The researchers couldn't believe it. They checked their equipment and ran the tests again. Same results. It took over a year before the findings reached the EPA. And when regulators confronted Volkswagen, the company didn't confess. They stalled. They offered technical explanations. They issued a voluntary recall claiming a software update would fix it. But the updated cars were tested again, and the numbers still didn't add up. For over a year, Volkswagen played a game of delay, deflect, and deny. They were betting the regulators would move on. They were wrong. In September 2015, faced with mounting evidence, Volkswagen finally admitted the truth. Yes, the defeat device was intentional, and it wasn't in a few cars, it was in 11 million vehicles worldwide. Within 24 hours, Volkswagen's stock price collapsed. $30 billion in market value vanished in the first week alone. CEO Martin Winterkorn resigned within days, claiming he was shocked that misconduct on such a scale was possible. But investigators weren't buying it. Lawsuits piled up from every direction. Car owners, investors, dealers, environmental groups, entire countries. Volkswagen pay out more than $33 billion in fines and settlements in the United States alone. Globally, the total cost has exceeded $50 billion, and some estimates push the full damage past $150 billion. Multiple executives were criminally charged. One senior executive was arrested at Miami International Airport trying to leave the country and sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. And here's the part that should make you pause. Researchers estimated that the excess emissions from these 11 million cars contributed to thousands of premature deaths worldwide. Real people, real lungs, real consequences. All because a company decided that winning mattered more than honesty. But here's what most people miss. After Dieselgate broke, regulators across Europe started testing other manufacturers, and they found suspicious gaps between lab results and real-world emissions across the industry. Volkswagen was the one that got caught, but the culture that made it possible was everywhere. Inside Volkswagen itself, employees described an environment where questioning leadership was career suicide. Targets were handed down as commandments. The pressure to deliver was so intense that people stopped asking whether the results were real. This wasn't one rogue engineer writing bad code. This was a systemic failure of leadership and ethics at every level of one of the world's largest corporations. Now here's where it gets interesting. Volkswagen didn't disappear. After the scandal, they made a dramatic pivot and went all in on electric vehicles. They committed tens of billions to building a new generation of EVs. They launched the ID series and built new battery factories. Volkswagen became one of the largest EV producers in the world within just a few years. Dieselgate forced them to abandon the very technology they had staked their future on. Diesel was dead, not just for Volkswagen, but for much of the industry. Cities across Europe banned diesel vehicles. Consumers turned away in record numbers. The entire automotive industry accelerated its shift towards electrification, in part because of the scandal Volkswagen created. A company founded to build a car for the people ended up deceiving those very people on a global scale. 11 million cars rigged, thousands of lives shortened, over $150 billion lost. All of it could have been avoided if someone in that room had said no, if leadership had accepted the technology wasn't ready instead of demanding engineers fake the results. Because here's the thing about lies built into systems, they scale. One defeat device is a crime. 11 million defeat devices is a catastrophe. Volkswagen survived, but the scar is permanent. Every car they sell from now on carries the ghost of Dieselgate. Every promise about clean energy will be measured against the years they spent lying about it. No company is too big, too trusted, or too powerful to be brought down by its own deception. The truth always catches up. The only question is how much damage you do before it does.